So why do they call you Brown?
That's my last name.
Oh, okay.
John Brown.
Oh, okay.
357 Productions is proud to present The Masonian, a monthly podcast for Freemasons with a focus on the Grand Jurisdiction of North Carolina. While not an official function of the Grand Lodge of North Carolina, we operate with full endorsement of Grand Master Gene Cobb. The opinions expressed on this show are those of the participants and in no way reflect the opinions of the Grand Lodge of North Carolina, its members, or any appendant bodies. We used to have to go through this boring spiel that we didn't own the music, but we do now own the music, so we can play it anytime we want.
Dang right.
And we love it.
Thanks to Riley
Yeah.
and his radio station.
And tonight we've got Master Bill Faison, who is current master of Eagle number 19. Is also chair of the publications committee this year. He's over continuing education for the Davie Academy and is a lawyer by trade. So again, we're definitely excited to have Brother Bill Faison on the show with us tonight.
Bill, thank you for coming all the way down. And once more, he's trekked down here in the middle of the woods, but he said his GPS faithfully got him here one more time. It's always nice to have you back at the tractor shed, Bill.
As good a meal as you do at this tractor shed, you ought to be able to smell your way here.
Yeah, there you go.
It's awesome.
Known Bill quite a while. I think we first ran into Bill probably, I did anyway, at Wilkerson College. You were when you were a deacon, you were in the same class as Brown. What year was that, fellas?
I don't know. What do you think? Just 4 years ago?
Something like that. 4 or 5 years ago. Time flies when you're having fun. Yeah. So that's kind of where I first met Bill. But Bill's one of those guys that you just kind of keep running into. Knew him through Scottish Rite, and then kind of the big thing that put us together really is at Davie Academy. We asked Bill to run kind of the continuing ed workshop program, and that's worked out really well. And we'll talk about that at length in a little bit. But I was just really struck by the way that he conducts his business. The thing about Bill is Bill has follow through. He has good ideas. He doesn't mind sharing them. There's a lot of dudes in Masonry that I really love, but it's hard to get them committed. Right? They're busy. We're all busy, but when you run into one of those fellas that will do what he says he's going to do when he says he's going to do it and has the same passion that you do, what you need to do, take notes, ladies and gentlemen, is to latch onto them and make them your best buddy. So we've kind of done that with Bill, and strangely enough, he's on the list of the next 30 people I was kind of thinking about getting on the podcast at some point, and he called me the other day. And I guess everybody knows by now, I've mentioned it on the show a couple of times, that I'm stepping away from the Grand Lodge Committee on Masonic Education. My regular cycle is up there, so I'm stepping away from that. And I kind of asked not to be on any committees this year, just for a lot of personal reasons and professional reasons. Just felt like it was the thing to do. And Bill, this week, picked up the phone last week and called me. And he just wanted to call and say, Ben, I really appreciate what you did and hate to see you step away and hope you come back. And he didn't have to do that. I mean, me and Bill are friends, but we're not, best friends. It's not like the guys that you hang out with all the time, mainly because of distance, I think, Bill. But it just meant a heck of a lot to me personally. And anyway, while I had him on the phone, I thought I'd take that opportunity to get him on down here and talk about some important stuff that is going on with the Grand Lodge.
Well, Ben, you've done so much for Masonry, and you continue to do so much for Masonry, that having you back away from anything is a tremendous loss. And I'm happy for Scottish Rites. They've got you. I'm happy for Sophia. They've got you. But we need to clone you, I think. We could use you in about 3 or 4 other places, but I don't blame you for taking a break. But you're important to making Masonry go forward in North Carolina, and everybody needs to work together to find a way to keep you involved.
Well, indeed, it takes all of us. I may be back. I felt like I needed a break, and I think the guys some of the guys in Purple and in Raleigh are probably glad to see me take a break. So that's all right. I may be back sometime.
I doubt that's so. You just take all the break you need and get your breath, and then come on back, because we need you at the Grand Lodge level doing what you do, because you bring to the process vision, foresight, insight, and wisdom, and it's hard to come by. It just is hard to come by. And you bring a unique combination of all that together. I've accused you on more than one occasion of being an instigator, because you are. but you're an instigator of good ideas, of good things, and you're an instigator that makes the process go forward.
I appreciate you saying that.
And if you keep on, we're going to have a lack of oxygen and headspace in here.
That's right. I'm writing down. Bring Bill back. Bring Bill back. Hey, Brown, can you
awesome.
can you rip that part of the audio out and that just be our intro from now on about how
absolutely
great I am?
That was money well spent.
It's all good. Bill's one of the more interesting dudes I know, not just from Masonic things, but I found this out about Bill when we were interviewing for Davy instructors, and he sent in a resume, and it was the most incredible thing I'd ever seen. Bill, I'm going to let you go through all this, but you said you grew up on a farm, you've been a lawyer, you've been a state legislator, you scuba dive, did you mountain climb?
I've flown an airplane or two once or twice, and soloed cross country across the U.S. and up and down the East Coast, and I've done a little bit of that sort of thing. It's
He
sort
is
of
the most interesting man in the world.
Gross motor skill kind of activities, for lack of any ability to do fine motor skill activities.
It's like the Dos Equis, man.
Yeah, the Dos Equis, man.
Tangoing with somebody. Well, you speak Spanish?
No, I can read a little bit of it, but I do it poorly. But one of my kids does. One of my kids is... He went to App, got a degree in entrepreneurship, got a minor in international business, spent a semester in Spain, picked up a little bit of Spanish along the way, and decided that what he really wanted to do in life was be a contractor. So he came back, found a contractor in Raleigh to work with, got started, and in 6 months the contractor turned all the building over to him. He was just out bird dogging new business. The guy's just incredible. He's great with people, great with organization, has all the verbal skills, but also all the math skills. And he's just really good at doing it. But he was telling me how that he had just gotten on the job maybe a couple of weeks, and his boss was talking with one of the subs who happened to be Hispanic. And the sub answered the boss's question, and the boss didn't understand what he said. And so he asked him again and again and again. And then finally my son, who was trying to be polite and just wait for the guy to get it, turned and looked at the boss and said, "What he said to you was," and he gave him the translation. And the boss said, "Well, what I was trying to tell him was," and Breck nodded, my son, and translates it back to the guy. And so he's picked up some Spanish, and it's worked really well for him. But all three of my sons were captains of the soccer team when they were in high school, which meant they were playing with a lot of Hispanic kids, and had Hispanic kids as friends, among a whole slew of people they had as friends. And so they picked up some Spanish. And so my son's on the job one day working, and one of the contractors said something about playing football, soccer, on Saturday. And the other guy said, well, he, referring to my son, wouldn't know what to do because he's a gringo. And, of course, Breck's heard all this. And so he joins in the conversation. He says, now, wait a minute, guys. He said, I've been playing soccer since I was 2. And I'd be delighted to go out and play with you guys on Saturday. So they invited him over, and Breck's about 6 foot tall, but my other 2 sons are 6'2" or so. And so Breck said it was an interesting day on the soccer field because in high school he was sort of average height, and there were a lot of guys taller than he was. And he said at this soccer game he was the tallest one on the field. He was. But he had a good time. They had a good time, and it helped with his business.
So it's a good transition into one of the things I was going to do a little later in the show, but since we're on this, you and I and Raul Herrera have discussed at various times having somehow a lodge that has a Hispanic heritage.
Yes.
We understand that we can't do the ritual in Spanish. It says in the code that it has to be done in English.
Right.
But here's the crux of the thing. I'm 100% convinced that there are a lot of good Hispanic men out there that would be very good for the craft, and the craft would be very good for them. We talk about this a lot on the show, but I feel like we need some way to capture them. And maybe the way to capture them is just for your normal old lodge to go, have a conversation or invite a Hispanic guy to your breakfast. Kind of, we don't recruit, but we dance around it, sort of. Maybe we should just reach out to those guys in little local areas, but I can't help but feel that there is a lot of guys that we should find some way to capture, and maybe a lodge with a who.
the guy that we did on the last podcast from Masonic Revival.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, and we talked about that with him a little bit, and his sister. But anyway, So I know you're a fan. Just talk about the Hispanic community and what you think and what might be a way that we could reach them.
So this is my buddy Ben Wallace's instigator again. So Raul Herrera, who's the junior warden in our lodge, is a native of Honduras, I think.
Or is it Ecuador?
Maybe it's Ecuador. I keep mixing them up, but I think you're probably right, Ecuador. And so Raul is just an absolutely great guy. Selected by the Chamber of Commerce as the Man of the Year, and has a couple of daughters, both of whom have gone to named universities, and just a real bright family, wonderful wife, great mother, wonderful person in our lodge. And there's another guy in our lodge who's formerly the treasurer of the Puerto Rican Lodge, Grand Lodge. And Raul has had some authors in to speak about the books they've written on Masonry and the connection of that in the Hispanic world. And so Ben was talking to Raul and I one day in Greensboro at an event associated with what we were doing up there, and suggesting that we go put together a lodge. And Raul got into the idea, and I thought it was an absolute great idea. And we've talked about what would have to be done to do it. And I've been watching the steps that have been taken with Lux Libertas to sort of go to school some on Lux Libertas is what needs to happen. And of course, I've been a little busy this year with the responsibilities in the East, so we'll get beyond that next year, and then Raul and I'll get back to this. But he's been talking about it. He's been talking it up with some people. And this, among many other of your ideas, is going to come to fruition sooner or later. It's on the agenda to get done.
I hope so. And somehow we need to, reach across the state. So hopefully that lodge could, if it comes about, maybe it could travel like Wilkerson College Lodge does.
That would be an option.
Or
that'd be a great option.
I'm not sure. I'm just not sure how exactly to pull it off. But I know that we're missing a lot of good guys out there. Because, we work Hispanic guys at work, and they're fine, stellar, good guys. They come to work every day. They're happy. Of course, we have good hiring practices, but I'm sure they're bad ones just like every other slice of society. But why not? And their heritage in South America is that they take lodge very seriously down there, much more so than we do. And so I guess I shouldn't say it. Well, no, I'm going to say it exactly like that. I take lodge very seriously, but they don't have men of prestige are in their lodges in South America, and they take it very important. It's important to them. So because it's important to them, they give it the respect that it deserves. They dress for lodge. They're good with their ritual. That is my understanding. So anyway, so they come from that culture anyway. I would love to see us parlay that into some members.
We're going to do it. We're going to bring that particular one of your ideas to fruition. It is going to happen.
Okay, write that down, Brad.
It is going to happen. There's going to be no doubt about it.
So you were telling us that you grew up on a farm. Just tell us a little bit about growing up and where you went to school and how you got to be a lawyer, and try to concise that down into 4 or 5 minutes or so.
Yeah, well, I'll try to do it even faster than that. So my father's family had a tobacco farm in eastern Wake County, and that's where I grew up. And my mother's family was from Martin County. She got the first Beta Club scholarship out of Martin County to go to Raleigh to go to school, and she was very proud of that. And so I enjoyed being on the farm. When I was a kid, you could stand in my front yard, and as far as you could see in every direction, everybody was related by blood or marriage.
Nice.
And it was a nice area to grow up in, and a nice way to grow up. But I just didn't get that farming gene. I just missed it. In fact, the only thing I'm really afraid of in life is that somebody is going to put me back in a tobacco field to get sandlucks. I've done all that I really want to do. And when I was over in law school, and it get to be the fall of the year, about like it is now, I want to go out and walk in the woods, and just look around, get a gun, go hang out some. And I'd think about sitting there reading that dry, dead, dull law stuff, and I'd start thinking about sandlugs. and I start thinking about those tobacco fleas crawling through the gum and the hair on your arms, and I'd think, I can sit here and do this just a little bit longer. And so I did. So
where'd you go to school?
I went to Carolina to undergraduate school and law school, and got out of there and started practicing law. I always wanted to get in a courtroom. Got lucky, got in a courtroom. Ended up, tried a lot of cases, tried them in federal court and state court, and eventually ended up finding my way into working on medical malpractice, and started off doing it on the defense side and learned the craft, and then got on the plaintiff side to try to help people who'd been hurt. And really made me feel good to help people who'd been hurt. I really enjoyed that, and got to try cases all over this state and do good stuff professionally, and it just sort of worked out well for me. I was doing good things to help people and able to support my family in the process. Couldn't get much better.
Good. And then you decided to get into politics.
Well, I'd always been interested in doing that. I had gotten involved in politics when I was in high school, and had decided, in fact, one of the things that got me interested in being a lawyer is that when I was playing some politics in high school, all the people I saw in politics were lawyers. And I figured they must have the time to do it, so I was aimed toward law school so I could go get in politics. But then I started practicing law and found out I really liked it and didn't have time for politics. And then reached a point in life where it just sort of came along, and ended up spending 8 years in the General Assembly, and that has worked out well for Masonry, because in the General Assembly, part of what you had to do was to process legislation. And about 3,000 pieces of legislation would get put in every year. About 1,300 would make it through one house or the other. And then over the course of a 2-year legislative session, about 800 to 900 new bills would pass. But for that to happen, you had to be organized in a committee system. And each committee had to be doing its work. And each committee had a chairman. And each chairman had to be managing that committee in a fashion that would put the matter before the body, give all the members an opportunity to speak, give the public an opportunity to speak, decide whether anybody needed any new or additional information, and if not, vote the matter and move on. And then when you got to the floor of the House, or the Senate, either one, I was in the House, then you had the same process to go over again. The bills would come up, people would introduce them, explain them, debate them, and you'd vote them again. So I saw a lot of that. And then when I was in Masonry, but I didn't have much time for it. I was practicing law full-time and being in the legislature and being a father of 6 kids, and needed to go to soccer games and gymnastics shows and one thing and another, and so there just wasn't much time for Masonry. But I reached a point where I could spend more time in Masonry, but when I did, I ended up in my lodge, I'll admit to it, my lodge, and the meetings were horribly run. They were not well organized. It was largely a waste of time. Something that could have taken 5 minutes was taking 20 minutes, and it was taking 20 minutes because the folks running the show weren't organized. They weren't organized to do it, and they didn't know how to handle a meeting. They didn't know how to process motions.
Because they'd never been taught.
Never been taught. And if you haven't been taught, and if you hadn't seen it, I mean, it's not something you can absorb out of the air.
Right.
And so you gave me an opportunity to get involved with Davie Academy, and the first thing a project I wanted to do was the art of chairing a lodge meeting, and to go back and put that together using the code, but also, and because of what I had done for 8 years, I knew the significance of it, and I knew how to make it flow. And so we did the art of chairing the lodge meeting and put it on, and we had, 115 or so brothers across the state who took time to come be part of that.
Yep.
And I've talked to some of the brothers who were there, and they've talked about how they used what they learned there in their lodge meetings after that, and how much better things ran. And so I then started promoting the idea of us doing a Preparing for the East seminar as well. Again, going back to the code, but going back to it and trying to put this together in a committee fashion, because we've got so many men, good men, in a lodge that want something to do and
Yes.
want some responsibility.
Yes.
And so if we organize the lodges around committees, not just the 7 required by the code, but another 11 or so committees on buildings, and fundraising, and whatever it is you want to do, have a committee that'll do it. Put somebody in charge of it. And then get it with them before a meeting and say, I'm going to call on you for a committee report. What have you been doing? Because you're going to need to stand up and tell your brothers what you've been doing.
Yeah.
And it motivates people to get involved, and it gives them an opportunity for leadership. Because in that sort of system, it's the committee chairman who decides how to manage that. And my guys are doing just an absolutely great job. And although we have a lot of committees, you've been to one of our meetings, you've sat in the East with me, and you know that even though you have a full agenda, because of the way the agenda is organized, we can get through that in a hurry. And one of the things that we discovered is that part of the problem in a lodge meeting is the old Bonson agenda, which was carried forward in the code,
Yes.
was before set theory. You know, set theory is the idea is you take things that are similar and you group them together. Well, the old Bonson agenda had the secretary jumping up and down 5 times in the course of a meeting. It had the business of the lodge, that is the things done by vote, spread over 3 different places in a meeting agenda. It's the most disorganized thing I'd ever seen in my life. Plus, it had you doing the secretary's report, the secretary's minutes, which you do as part of the closing in the OSW, under the Bonson agenda. And it didn't provide a place for Masonic education, which the code requires us to have at every meeting.
Yes.
And so it not only was the Bonson agenda disorganized, but it was wrong. It also didn't provide an opportunity for the senior deacon to discharge his duties and welcome and accommodate visiting brethren. And so, as part of the Davie Academy work, we put together an agenda that made sense, that met the requirements of the code, that grouped everything in the right place. I wish I could take credit for the grouping of the secretary's material all in one place, but I can't. That belongs to Doug Caudle, because I saw Doug do this in our lodge when he came around. He'd look at the secretary and say, read the minutes of the last meeting, now clear your desk. Mm-hmm. And that's all you need to do. And let the secretary knows what he's got to cover, and let him clear his desk. And then he's done, and he can sit down.
Amen.
And we go forward and do the rest of it. And so Davie Academy gave us an opportunity to figure out how to redo that agenda in a fashion that would work. We ended up putting in an amendment to the code to adopt it into the code, and it was adopted at our last annual communication. And so now we have a new agenda. And it's not an agenda that's required that anybody follow it. It's just a guide. But if we're going to have a guide, we ought to have a guide that's both organized and correct. And Bonson is neither organized nor correct.
So where can somebody find that guide?
So it's now part of the code, and I'm assuming they've got it updated in Raleigh. So it's in the code, and you can go there and look it up. I don't remember the code section. I probably should. If I'd been thinking about it, I'd have looked at it before I came tonight. Yeah. But it's in the code now, and you can find it there.
We probably ought to pull that out, have Jonathan pull that out and put it as a sticky somewhere, either on the Grand Lodge page or maybe on the Masonic Education page under like the, where we keep like the officer's handbook and stuff, or some have it somewhere that guys can find it pretty easy instead of having to go through the code. Yeah. Well, that's all wonderful work. Just so everybody knows, we go over this every time, but there is vast confusion over it. Davie Academy runs a curriculum. The workshops are like a one-day, one-shot specific focus event. And so you have one coming up.
We do. The 4th, which is Saturday week, we've got one coming.
And they'll be taught in 6, you're doing 6 locations again?
Six locations again across the state.
At the same time. Same time, same day.
Yeah. And this is going to be the Art of Chairing a Lodge meeting. Back in the first Saturday in October, we did Preparing for the East, which was talking about organizing a lodge by committees, we started from deciding how you were going to make your opening speech to the lodge, to talking about organizing by committees, to talking about opening a lodge of Sora, just some of the practical things that you need to know. And then the Art of Chairing the Lodge meeting talks about the agenda, talks about the 4 motions that are allowed in Masonry. There are only 4 allowed in Masonry. It talks about the procedure that's allowed in Masonry. We don't follow Robert's Rules of Order unless it doesn't otherwise interfere with or conflict with the ancient customs and constitutions of Masonry. We have a procedure unique to ourselves. There is, however, an interesting little point in the procedures that we do have. In the code, it says that a call of the previous question is not allowed. It also says in the code that a motion to close debate is allowed. Well, I'm not sure who drafted that part of that document, because a call of the previous question and a motion to close debate are identically the same thing. They are in no regard different, one from the other. They are describing the same event using different words, nothing else. And so to try and clear that up, I wouldn't have found this if I wasn't trying to help out with Davey and do this workshop. But having found the problem, I like to fix problems I find. Mm-hmm. And having found that problem, we're going to propose an amendment to the code that will keep the concept of the lodge being able to vote to close debate, will remove from the prohibited list a motion to call the previous question. And then it says that other obstructive motions are not allowed Masonically, but it doesn't tell you what that could possibly be. One of those is to lay upon the table a motion. Another is to lay upon a table indefinitely a motion. Another is to adjourn a meeting. We don't think of it in Masonry, but the ability to adjourn a meeting is an important Robert's Rules of Order kind of event. I saw this done in a legislative committee once. There was somebody who had a motion before the finance committee, and it was a somewhat contentious matter. And it was contentious because of the small group who was pressing it, and the members, regardless of their party, were unhappy with what was going on. And so one of the members finally stood up and asked to be recognized, and the chair recognized her. And she said, "Mr. Chairman, I move to adjourn." And he had to vote it. And when he did, 85% of the room raised their hand, and we all got up and left. We're done. Discussion is over. Well, that's permitted in legislative bodies, and it's permitted in Robert's Rules of Order. But it's not permitted in a Masonic meeting. So it's a prohibited motion. Useful in some circumstances, but not helpful in ours.
I'm always telling masters that if somebody, one of the things that they ought to tell their lodge at the beginning of their year is, I have an agenda. I'll be producing an agenda. If you want to get something on the agenda, all you got to do is call me. We'll talk about it. But if you bring something up and I'm not prepared to talk about it, I'm not real smart, I have to take some time to think about it, I'll table it. Don't surprise me with stuff as master and then put me on the spot to do something that I don't want to do, or I'm not prepared to do, or I need to research the code, or I need to talk to some more people. There's nothing wrong with tabling something.
Except that it's not allowed Masonically. I'm sorry, but really, you can't table a motion in Masonry.
But he can refuse to entertain it. He can refuse to entertain it.
That he can do. He can say, I will not take that up. He can say, come see me, we'll talk about that later.
We'll get it on the agenda for next time.
He can refer it off to a committee.
Yeah.
He can do a lot of things with it. But one of the things we teach in the Art of Chairing a Lodge meeting is that what a master needs to do is to train the brothers in his lodge that when they rise, salute, and address the chair, that they should say, "Worshipful Master." And then he should say, "My brother, to what point do you rise?" In other words, what do you want to do? And then he says so. And if that's what the master wants to go forward with on his agenda, then he may take the motion. But if he's not ready for that one, he can always say, "Well, brother, I'm not going to take that up right now, but see me after the meeting. We'll talk about it. We're going to find a way to help you get done what you want to get done." Or he can say, "I'm going to refer that to a committee. And brother, I'd like you to chair the committee, and here are the two people who are going to help you. And then y'all come back at the next meeting, and we'll have a report, and we'll see what we're going to do."
It's the Jeff Morris way of doing things right there.
Yeah.
You want to bring something up, he'll put you in charge of it every time. It's funny, I travel a lot, and you see so many different ways of running a meeting. And, I'm in big lodges with really strong lodges that use their committees. I mean, little lodges that barely have enough guys to open. They probably don't even know who's on their committees. You just run a whole gamut. But the key is, I think, is education.
Yes.
Provide those guys at least to know what to do, so that if they hit a snag, they can fall back on their rules.
Yeah. Well, the whole idea is to help people be able to make it a better experience for everybody sitting in the room. And a better experience not just in the flow of the lodge meeting, but a better experience in that people feel like that it's an interesting night because of Masonic education. They feel like they have a involvement in it and a commitment to the process, and they feel like they can get something done when they're there. And importantly, they feel like their time is not being wasted.
Right.
You know, every man's life is very, very valuable. And if you find, and generally if you find dynamic people who are leaders in the community who want to be involved in Masonry, then they probably really value their time and their life. And I suspect if you could get them to admit it, they'd probably tell you that they don't tolerate themselves wasting their time. And because they won't tolerate themselves wasting their time, they're not likely to tolerate anybody else wasting it either. And so if we get in a lodge and things are happening and they're interesting and dynamic, then they want to be there and they'll be involved, and we need them and we need their energy. And if they get in a lodge and it's dragging, or the meeting's not accomplishing anything, there's no education, there's no camaraderie, they're going somewhere else. They're not going to let anybody waste their time.
Yeah, that's me. I'm like that. But I think it's an interesting study in psychology, the guy that will argue, the two guys in lodge that will argue for 30 minutes about should we buy 3 or 4 dozen eggs for the breakfast that's coming up. I mean, what does that say about those guys? They don't really care if we're buying 3 or 4 dozen eggs. They want somebody to listen to them.
We hope they don't care about that.
I mean, but we've all seen it, right?
Oh, yeah. We've all seen it. Yeah.
It makes just for a painful experience. You're right. And the guys that are leaving are the guys that you probably won't sticking around. And the guys arguing about should we buy 3 or 4 dozen eggs, or
that's when that master needs to
the ones that are
step
on
in.
everybody's nerves.
Yeah, that's when that master needs to step in and say, we're not going to discuss this tonight. We're going to handle that with a committee, and you two are on it.
Yes.
Decide. Come back and tell us what you decided. Now we're moving on.
I love it.
And get on with the agenda. And then the guys who want to be worried about that and want to deal with it can. And they can feel fulfilled because they got the eggs straightened out. And the rest of us can have a meeting.
Amen. I like it. So if you're interested in what Bill's talking about, go to one of the workshops. They're well publicized. They're coming up. What's the date?
November the 4th.
November 4th. So this thing will barely be out, but it'll be out. And then if you want a kind of a longer look at leadership and management stuff, the Davy Academy courses are more than a one-day shot, but they'll be coming to a location near you. Every quarter there will be one in your area. And if you want a really deep shot, then go to Wilkerson College. That's 3 long, intensive weekends. So North Carolina is providing lots of ways for people to learn about these kinds of things.
And because of your leadership and because of your drive, we're doing it. We got to thank you for it.
Don't stop.
Because really, Davy Academy is your brainchild. And I sat down here in this tractor shop on that board that folks can't see on the wall over there, and you drew out this agenda and drew it and went over this stuff ad nauseum. And it's because of your drive and your foresight that we have Davy Academy. And our lodge system in North Carolina is a better place for the effort and the energy and the sacrifice you made to be in this tractor shop late into the night, or tractor shed, late into the night, planning and theorizing on where you wanted to go with this, all for the purpose of making Masonry better for your brothers. And thank you for doing that.
Well, thank you, Bill. Very kind of you to say so. Let's talk about so you and I are both in lame duck sessions as committee chairs. I'm outgoing on education and you're outgoing on publications. But talk a little bit about what publications does, what it was doing when you got there, what you're leaving it doing, and how it's set up to go forward. And then we'll transition into the kind of the bigger picture.
Okay. Well, I was completely blown away when I got a call from Most Worshipful Grandmaster-elect Gene Cobb, inviting me to come on the pub board and to be chair of it. And there was a new editor for the Mason about to come in, and the pub board was going to go new places. Riley Beeman was there. He's ready to go to work, get some stuff done, and he has, and some people are going to be real excited to hear what Riley's done and what he's about to make available to Masons in North Carolina. And I'll tell you about that in a moment. But I got invited to come on and be part of that, and even to be part of the redraft of the pub board's mandate within the code. And so the pub board mandate was focused pretty exclusively on the North Carolina Mason. But the Publications Board has a much broader view of what's happening. You know, we have the North Carolina Mason today, and it's a both online and it's in print. But I'll bet you 15 years from now, we only have it online. But I bet you that'll also be true of the New York Times and the Washington Post and the News and Observer and the Charlotte Observer and the Asheville Times and whatever other paper you may be looking at. My guess is 15 years from now, the only place you're going to be able to see it is online. Well, to accommodate those changes, some far-sighted people, including Right Worshipful Brother Speed Hallman and Most Worshipful Grandmaster Gene Cobb, saw a need to change the code as it relates to the pub board. And some folks let me get involved with sort of drafting part of that. I had a good time doing that. I would say my role was very small in that. Other people's role was very big. But the product we ended up with was a new direction for the pub board, focused on all publications of the Grand Lodge, and with a focus on communication among lodges in an electronic format. And so the pub board we organized into committees as well. And one of those committees has to do with social media and how lodges can use that. And your sidekick, Riley Beeman, agreed to chair that committee of the pub board. And he has done a how-to video for lodge members on how to access and use Facebook. And before the first of the year, he'll have that out and in their hands where they can go on YouTube and see the video and get a how-to instruction of communicating with social media the Masonic message.
I hear you, big boy.
The other thing that we did that was really good was turning a lot of stuff into social media Facebook pages. Our newspaper, the Grand Lodge Facebook page, different things like that, and we're seeing a lot of people on it. I mean, people are utilizing it a lot. So, that's really good. I'm really glad to see that so many people are utilizing social media. They're sending messages to us. We've just got a large following. What started off to be a new page, and now it's just blossomed out, and a lot of that is due to our committee. You know, a lot of people have different roles in it. So social media is really taken as we know, we talk about it a lot. It's just taken as a main seat tool now to utilize with people all over the state. They're liking the page and sharing it and putting information on it.
It's just the way young people process information and receive information these days.
And Riley, you won't. I don't think that I've tried to think how in the world we'd ever get you enough credit for what you're doing, and I can't think of a way to do it. But maybe this is the forum to do it. So let me thank you on behalf of the pub board, and let me thank you on behalf of Masons in general.
Yeah, we'll keep him around.
What you're doing is just absolutely great, and it takes somebody with your talent and with your resources to be able to do that for Masonry, and somebody who's willing to sacrifice your time. And I know some of the scope of the things you're doing. I don't know how one man figures out how to get it all done. But if you really want something done, go find somebody who's too busy to get it done, because they're the ones who will make it work eventually. And you're the one who's making this work. So thank you very much on behalf of Masons in North Carolina, on behalf of the pub board for what you're doing and for the benefits you're extending to all of us.
The one thing we sit here and we're giving kudos out to everybody and everything, but when I got on the publication board, it was kind of a new thing for me, and it was really refreshing coming in with somebody that was a chairman that had everything in order. We all sit in meetings to where we're like, my God, this is never going to end. This is pointless. We're spinning our wheels. It all goes back to what you said earlier. Everybody's time is very valuable, especially the guys that have very little of it, and we exert a lot out. you keep everything in order. There's no fluff to the meeting, and I really appreciate that. Like, we get in, we get the business done. We do a lot of Zoom meetings. And the other thing is you keep us on task. So you send me reminders all the time. You let me know, hey, we got one going on. So I do appreciate that, and I appreciate how you've handled it and directed it. I mean, we couldn't have done it without you. I mean, you really kept the train on the tracks, and it was good. So,
Well, thank you.
Out everything good.
We make the thing go forward.
We're all great.
Yeah, we're awesome.
We're awesome.
What can we say about Brown now?
Brown got it going.
If it weren't for him, this wouldn't be on the air.
Exactly.
Right.
Nothing.
Hey,
none
we
of it
couldn't
would
be
happen.
kissing each other's tail here if Brown wasn't behind the scenes making it all
And
happen.
if you guys
That's
could
awesome.
all see Brown's face while we're all doing all this, he's over here rolling his eyes.
Thank you very much.
No, I was talking to Randy Browning the other day, and we were expressing some frustration over some of the guys in the craft, and he said we just get so spoiled hanging around with the guys that are like us, and so I just really enjoy being around Masons like y'all. Anyway,
And we say this
all
a
right,
lot.
that's
We
enough of
say
that.
this a lot. We say this a lot, and we can't say it enough. There are guys like that in every single lodge that are not doing anything.
Yeah.
You just got to tell somebody you want to do something or make it happen.
Yeah.
Take charge, do something.
Do something.
Give them an opportunity. The leadership is there. The desire is there. The motivation is there. We just need a structure that will allow them to do it, and we need to inculcate within the idea of organization for the lodge
Yes.
a structure that facilitates leadership and facilitates individual opportunity.
Yeah, and the Grand Lodge is very good at that. They can let us go create all sort of new and exciting things, and kudos to them for doing it. Kenneth Lambert over in Charlotte, for whatever reason, didn't the Davy Academy stuff, just for whatever reason that didn't seem to be for them. So he went out and created this whole leadership management thing for their district. DDGM, DDGL on board. They're going to meet, I think, monthly, and it's nice to have an environment when things like that can happen. A guy has an idea, go to it, kiddo.
Yeah, make it work.
Keep it in bounds and go do it.
Yeah.
So the three committees, the Masonic Education Committee, the Publications Committee, and the Public Relations Committee, I understand, Right Worshipful Brother Hallman wants them to work in close conjunction together going forward next year. I don't know a whole lot about what all that entails or what his vision is, just because I'm outgoing and so he hasn't had that discussion with me, but he has with like Curry and Tony and I guess the guy that's taken over pubs. What do you know about that?
Elliot Warnock, who has a great background in newspaper and in publications, will be taking over as chairman of the pub board. I've enjoyed my year there. Right Worshipful Brother Speed Hallman has invited me to go over and given me an opportunity to be part of the Board of General Purposes, and I'm excited to go do that. I'll miss Riley, but I've decided that I can work it out. Everybody on the Board of General Purposes has a responsibility for some other committee, and so I said, well, if you want me to take the pub board, I'll be happy to do that. I kind of know those guys. So I'll still have an opportunity to have some involvement there. But exactly how he has in mind doing it, he and I haven't discussed. But it makes great sense to me.
Yeah, me
because as you and I were going through this past year, talking about some of the ideas we had, the publicity board was a natural place to go to sort of work up some of that information and get it out. And there's a natural synergy between education, the pub board, and the publicity board. And so getting all three of those working together would be just wonderful, I think.
I know I go everywhere in lodges and I'm telling them about things that we had to offer on education and they just didn't know.
Yeah.
And we were, put it up on the website, but beyond putting it up on the website and talking about it here, how do you get word out in the lodges? We tried direct emailing stuff and that was problematic and in some ways, and even when we did send stuff, people wouldn't know about it. So hopefully they're going to make that work. We got a lot of really good things, and hopefully they're going to be able to tie all that together. Tell us about the Board of General Purposes, just for people that don't know what that committee does.
So it's a 12-member committee. It's made up of some of the Grand Line officers and made up of six Masons who are appointed for 3-year terms, two Masons a year for 3-year terms. And I understand it functions as the board of directors, but I've never been on it, and I'll be completely new to it, and I have no idea, other than to have some sense that it has an opportunity to review and input on the proposed amendments to the code, and that its role and responsibility in part seems to me, and again it seems to me, that it's maintaining communication with the various committees and making sure that the Grand Line officers are generally aware of what is happening in each committee and what, if anything, needs to be focused on and addressed.
Yeah, I've never been on that committee, but I've sat in a few of them, and it's like a general oversight. All of the Grand Lodge leadership is usually there, and they're talking about things that go on at miles above my head. But yeah, I'm excited for you. That's gonna be a good deal. Let's run through a few announcements here. Just one for the home team. Blackmer Lodge is fixing to undergo an extensive remodel. We've been saving money for years, and we're going to fly Ryan Flynn down from New Hampshire, who is the preeminent Masonic artist in North America, to do murals on our wall that are going to hopefully be nearly as good as like St. John 3, and we have high hopes for what this is going to look like. So we'll be giving you monthly updates on that remodel, because I know everybody's really interested in that, but we're just so proud we can't help talk about it a little bit. Grand installation is December the 2nd. That's going to be at University of North Carolina in whatever that room was. We did it last year. What's the name of that place?
It's the Carolina Inn. And on December the 1st, the Board of General Purposes is going to meet at Eagle Lodge. We're going to feed them lunch. They're going to start meeting at 11 o'clock. And then at 2:15, Eagle Lodge is going to open for the Grand Lodge for the ceremony. And so anybody who can is invited and welcomed to come on up to Eagle in Hillsborough and join us for the Grand Lodge opening up there. We've been doing a little work on our lodge too. We're real proud of it. We've redone our columns, and we've got new window curtains going in downstairs and upstairs, and the curtain making lady has assured me she'll have them all done by the end of November, and so we should be ready for everybody to arrive.
Take 2 minutes and tell folks about Eagle Lodge. So there's a couple of lodges in North Carolina that I consider destination lodges. You've just got to go see these. St. John 3 is in a beautiful old building, probably the most beautiful lodge room in the state. 80 Broadway in Asheville is another one. Phoenix 8 down in Fayetteville is one, and Eagle 19 is certainly one that everybody needs to see. Give us the 2-minute history and about the building and the lodge.
Yeah, so Eagle came to be in 1791. It built the lodge building in 1823 with a raffle organized by the legislature. Can we get away with that today? No. Well, and it took them a while to pay the raffle off. But in any event, there's even a brick on the building that you can find that has the 1823 inscribed into it.
How cool.
When the lodge was built, it had an observatory up on top with a telescope, but they couldn't get it to stop leaking. And so eventually they had to take the observatory off. The chairs in the lodge were put there in the 1850s, the officers' chairs. And if you've ever sit in one very long, you know it was the 1850s. I mean, you talk about a square chair. You could take a square and lay it up against the back of that chair, just as square as it can be. But they're beautiful old chairs, just absolutely beautiful. And then the chairs for the brothers, I don't know where those came from or when, but if you look at the leather on them and how worn it is, they've been there a long time too. And the wood on the floor is just beautiful. We've refinished some of the wood outside of the lodge room, and it's just gorgeous. And then there's been a debate among the brothers whether to keep the wood in the lodge room, its natural, worn, unfinished self, or to finish it out like the other. The finished wood is so stunningly beautiful. I hope in the end we go to the finished look, but we haven't gotten there yet. But we've been making some renovations, been updating some things. We've got a great history there. Eagle has been around so long that if you go through the old minutes, you can see where there was a debate between the Moonies and the Moderns. So the Moonies wanted to keep the lodge meetings on a lunar calendar so you'd have a full moon to be able to see your way to the lodge. The Moderns wanted to go to a standard calendar. In the end, the Moderns won by only about 2 or 3 votes. So the lodge calendar shifted off the lunar calendar. And we've continued to make progress ever since.
Fascinating. Yeah, you should put the observatory back. You know, we got better roofing techniques these days.
It would be a good idea to do it. We've still got the chairs, some of the stairs leading up. Some of the stairs were taken out, and in fact, somebody gave one to me. I've got sitting in my house one of these old steps that led up to the observatory, notched and all. It's just beautiful. But it had come out, and people were getting rid of them, and I said, sure, I'll take one.
Wouldn't it be something if you could put that back? How cool.
Oh, it would be. It would be absolutely awesome.
Grand installation, we covered that, but that's open to everybody. Anybody can go to that. So if you've never been to a grand installation, they're always very cool. I'm sure there's some information on the website about that. Wilkerson College, that's another thing that I've retired from, so I don't know a whole lot about it, although I know Curry is looking after academics now, and he's putting together next year. Registration is open. They open that October 1st. So if you are a deacon or you have a deacon in your lodge that would like the deep dive into leadership and management training, go right now and download the form and send them your application and your money. There is scholarship money. It costs $600 to go, but there's scholarship money available. So if you can't afford to go, there's money there for you, and there's a process for that, which they will walk you through.
You won't be disappointed.
Will not be disappointed. All of us sitting here are graduates, and it gets a little better every year, and I love that. I think we beat Davy to death. Middle chamber program, we just finished that up this past Saturday for this year. It was a wonderful program. Congratulations to all the students. We learned a ton of stuff together. We're looking forward to doing that again next year, and we're going to start that. So if you're in, so the middle chamber program is a deep dive into the allegory and symbolism and spiritual and philosophical side of the craft. That's either your thing, or it's not. But if that is your thing, then you'll certainly want to check this program out. It costs $100. You get 3 books and a journal, and you get an all-day lesson on the entered apprentice degree, an all-day lesson on the fellowcraft degree, and an all-day lesson on the master mason degree over the course of a year. But it all starts with something that we call the hook, which is my old allegory and symbolism lectures I used to give. We're going to give that in workshop style, Bill, 3 locations across the state on one day. January 27th. We don't have locations yet, but we'll have them out soon. We need to make that decision and get a flyer up. But save the date, January 27th. There'll be one in the east, one in the middle, and one on the west. I think we're going to go Greensboro in the middle. We're looking at maybe Lenoir in the west. I'm not sure about the east, but we'll announce that. If you miss that day where we do it 3 times across the state on one day at the same time, there's one makeup day. It's the following weekend, which is February the 3rd. That will be in Greensboro, central to the state, and one location. So that you got to go to the hook. In-house, we call it the hook, in order to qualify to take the rest of the program. So if you're interested, if that's your thing, look for the flyers. That's coming up. Captain Campbell is the outgoing Grand Historian. He's done it for, I think, 3 years now, 2 or 3 years. I'd just like to, we'll talk more about this when he's here next time, but as long as we're bragging on each other, Captain Campbell's done a very fine job, I think, being Grand Historian. He's always got an article in the North Carolina Mason. He has drove countless miles across the state going to do programs for lodges. He's a very fine Southern gentleman and a good guy. So he'll be the guest next month, and we look forward to having him. The last thing is the Grand Master I see is in London. He's over there for the 300th anniversary. I think the secretary is with him, the Grand Secretary, and I don't know who else went. I think Brenda's with them. I saw Jimmy Hicks they've hooked up with him over there, but I'm not sure what other people are over there. Doug Caudle's over there, but I'm not sure he's there for the same thing. He's Most Worshipful Brother Caudle's over there with Patrick Craddock. They got a tour going on. I'm not sure if they're going to, I don't think they're going to the 300th. I think they just happen to coincide their trips. Anyway, I look forward to hearing all about that. Maybe we'll get Gene to come and tell us about the
That'd be cool.
About the 300th anniversary. It's a big deal.
The picture I saw
So anyway.
online today was real cool.
And so, I guess we got until December. We'll talk about this next time. What a good job the Grand Master has done this year. We're just super proud of him. He's a Blackmer product. We like to say that every time. He was initiated, passed, and raised in Blackmer Lodge and was master there. So he's the home crowd. But he's done a very fine job as master, and I have every inclination that most worshipful brother Speed Hallman's going to do just as good. Just really blessed with good leadership, and God bless those guys for doing it, because drive me crazy driving
50,000,000 miles.
3 hours in one direction to go listen to the Eastern Star.
I admire them greatly for the
Get in at
service.
2:00 in the morning. I just
For the service they render, and for literally the Niagara Falls of emails they sit under, and the ability to pour oil on water when troubled. It's a great thing, and we're fortunate to have such good people who can provide both the leadership, who have the energy to make the travel and the trips, and who at the same time have the reflective, kind-hearted thought to be able to smooth out the rough places.
I got a lot of friends in a lot of other grand jurisdictions, and apparently we are super, super blessed not only to have good men doing that, but all of our leaders have been very humble guys. Bryant Webster and Doug Caudle, I mean, they're just salt of the earth kind of guys that just sit down and, have a tomato sandwich with you. And apparently in other grand jurisdictions, they get into the pomp and circumstance a lot more than we do in North Carolina. So I guess that's enough of that. But I love those guys. God bless them for doing it. Riley, what else you got?
That's it, boss.
Bill?
I'm good.
Brad, you ready to run us out of here? Go ahead, Bill.
I just appreciate the opportunity to come hang out with you for the evening, to be a part of you doing your thing. I never thought I'd be invited to be a part of anything like this, and I'm honored beyond belief. And the dinner was phenomenal. Thanks.
You're very welcome. Thank you for coming, and maybe we'll have you back.
I'll certainly come if you invite me.
I appreciate you. Thank you,
thank
brother.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Masonian. For more information and productions, please visit and like our Facebook page at 357 Productions or 357productions.com. You may also email us at 357productionsteam@gmail.com. Again, that is 357productionsteam@gmail.com. As always, tell people that you love them, and remember, we meet on the level and part on the square.
Somebody